Hello, everybody. Peace. Welcome to another episode. And today we're going to be talking about something that is a very powerful force in breaking up marriages, in breaking up relationships between people. And this is to do with a fantasy that possibly one or both of the spouses might go through. I hope you enjoy.
From beautiful seas to flourishing legacies.
So what I'm talking about is this thing is called limerence. And limerence is actually defined, I believe it was first coined by an author, I believe around 1973. And this is something that some people refer to as a form of love. Other people refer to it as a form of love addiction. And people have so many definitions of it. So I'm going to pull one up for you, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how that specific thing impacts marriages. And it can also be something that is non-romantic as well, even though the definition says here that it's specifically romantic. So limerence. Limerence is a psychological state of being that involves obsessive and involuntary romantic attachment to another person. It can be characterized by intrusive thoughts about the other person, a desire for the other person to reciprocate feelings, a desire to form a relationship with the other person. Physical signs are similar to anxiety and mania, and such as an elevated heart rate, difficulty sleeping, excessive perspiration, and there are emotional highs and butterflies as well when spending time with the other person, literally not even being with them, but being around them in their presence, and a fear of rejection or anxiety about losing the other person as well, and difficulty concentrating on activities, feeling emotionally dependent on the other person's reactions. So these are all things which are known as something called limerence. Now, the thing about limerence is most of the time it does sound like as if it's something to do with romantic feelings towards another person, but it isn't always romantic. It can be something that you feel towards a person who you idealize, right? You see them as someone who is very amazing in so many ways, and you imagine being friends with that person, and then when you're around them you get this mania almost, and almost like an emotional high as well, and it's very anxiety similar to that as well. So it's not just romantic, even though a lot of the literature talks about it as in a romantic way. For the sake of this episode, we are going to talk about it in the romantic sense. Now, the thing about limerence is there is this ideal that is in our head. It is a fantasy that we have about a person other than our romantic partner. So now with our romantic partner, people might get confused. Well, isn't that what falling in love is? Isn't that what being passionate is? And yes and no in so many ways, because with true love, there is this security. It is this feeling of connection. However, there is this one-sidedness to this thing called limerence, which is also called love addiction as well. So you can actually be with the person and still feel this thing inside of your body, which is it really is like a high. It's like an emotional high without all of the substance abuse and things. So it's a kind of behavior. So if you want to kind of get a very simple definition of it, what it is an addiction. It is an addiction where you are thinking about someone constantly in your head, and at first it might not even feel like as if it's something romantic. It might just be a curiosity. Their name keeps popping up, and then you keep thinking about things that they've done or things that they could do, and then it kind of builds, and then the seed kind of grows, and then you kind of feed it a little bit more, and then there is this before you know it, it's this feeling of romance towards the other person. And people often describe this feeling as falling madly in love with someone, and a lot of the times that someone does not return those feelings, and at times when they do return those feelings, something happens which is very interesting. What happens is this limerent feeling that people might have towards each other, this addiction, almost getting high off another person's presence, which so many songs talk about and so many people idealize as well. What happens is this thing has a shelf life. It is very temporary. The high is temporary, and normally what breaks this addiction is reality, and that is when you've already got the object. They call it a limerent object, even though it's a person, which is such an interesting term that people describe it as. What happens is when you have the object, the fantasy that you created inside of your mind, this euphoric feeling of what this other person could be, it shatters, and there is this feeling of just almost repulsion sometimes, this feeling of rejection towards the other person, this feeling of what was I thinking? And it really is a very sobering reality. And the sad thing is that when people follow this feeling, confusing it for love, especially if they are married and they are in a communal relationship, they are together, they are partners, sacred partners in faith, what happens is that the consequences of following this feeling shatters everything that was really true in that relationship. Now, one person might say something like, well, was there anything true in the relationship between the husband and wife for them to, for the husband or the wife to be attracted to this other object or thing, right? Or this person, should I say? And the answer to that is that sometimes the things that are true can be distracted, and there could be blinders upon our eyes in seeing what is true, especially in moments of addiction. And addiction in itself is a coping mechanism. Now, I hope that you're following that this feeling is something that is not natural. This feeling of limerence is something which is from trauma. It is from specifically developmental trauma. And the reason why, and there is a reason why people fall into this, is because the very first reason is possibly, these are two possible reasons, it's an underlying factor. And normally the thing which the devil plays with, you can say as well, the thing which we succumb to, the things that we are weak in, are things which are related to our internal wounds, the scars that people cannot see, the ones that are from our trauma. And what happens is that this wound sees someone who is either a reminder of something comforting to them when they were in a hard time, or it could be even something else. Again, it's all related to the wounds. It could be something that the person is a representation of a need that you have, that this wound has caused you to have, that this person you believe can meet it. So for example, they might be someone who is a very warm and very kind. They might see you, right? They might say thank you and see you, and then instantly there's like this imprint that happens, even though your wife, for example, or husband has been seeing you for a long time, but the way this random person sees you makes you feel this, wow, okay, I am important. And that feeling is addictive, right? And again, it is just a fantasy based on just an interaction. Now, some people have said things like falling in love at first sight, and they say that maybe there's something metaphysical included in it. And I want to really bring to you this idea that our wounds and our trauma and the effect that it has on our body is so powerful. It leads so many of our subconscious behaviors, and it is something that is such a lead in our in the things that we do in our life, the people we are drawn to. So it's so powerful, these wounds are, and it can feel otherworldly at times, especially when you meet this person, they look at you, they make you feel important, and then you're like, oh, I've been seen. My whole life, I've been waiting to be seen. Obviously, you're not saying this in your head, but subconsciously, something is like dragging your thoughts into this feeling of being seen and feeling important. Now, those are two of the things. Like, for example, the person might represent a comfort that you had in childhood. Maybe it was some food that they gave to you which reminded you of your mother's cooking. At times when it was a difficult household, your mother's cookings made you feel very comforted, and this person did the same thing, and it's like, whoa. Yeah. And second thing might be the actual wounds that you have inside of you, and they kind of meet some kind of needs that you have, of being seen, or being validated, or feeling important, or you're perceiving them to see you a certain way, and that is addictive, right? It's like, oh, I'm adored. And it really is a fantasy. And the third thing which might make you limerent towards a person is this thing inside of us that we have suppressed. So it might be a gift. It could be something that you are denying within yourself. It could be something that is something that you are is covered in shame because you've been completely rejected for practicing it so much of your life. And then you see this other person who is literally just like amazing and enjoying it, and just really fully expressing themselves in a certain way. And this need inside of you is repressed, and you almost fall in love with a part of yourself that has been hidden for so long. And that is what really draws you to another person. Now, if a person was not married, this might be something that was, I guess, not so bad, right? I mean, it's still love addiction. There are not as many people getting hurt, but it's not as bad because you are not in a marriage, and less people are being affected by this addiction that you have. However, what is happening now, especially with the rise of social media, especially with the rise of filters, even news, the media on the television, movies, music, and anything that you can really put your hand on that is there to create a euphoric feeling on a fantasy, is something that is a real danger in marriages today. Because what the spouse, and it could be a female spouse and it could be a male spouse, and what they are seeing is this ideal, and they fall in love with this ideal, which really is a marketing gimmick, because they are trying, the whole intention of the selling you on an idea is to get you to sell into the idea. It's for you to buy in. It's for you to devote yourself to a way of thinking. And what happens is we become completely blinded to what is real and what is around us and what is in our marriages. And the bizarre thing is that a wife might see a man and think, wow, he's so amazing, or a man might see a woman and think, wow, she's so amazing. And then when they look at their actual spouses, they're like, hang on, like in reality they realize, oh, she was all those things, right? But this ideal just kind of pulled them inside, possibly in a moment of weakness, and that moment is like an imprint that comes onto our head, and we begin to become limerent, an object. We become obsessed. We become thinking about that person. Now, again, what do we do about this? Now, we know where it came from. We know what triggers it most of the time. We know why it's dangerous, because it breaks up marriages. A majority of marriages where one of the spouses cheats on the husband or the wife is because of this limerent feeling they have for another person. And a majority of the time, the relationship that they ignite with the person outside their marriage, it's destined to just fail. It has a shelf life. Addiction does not last forever. And if it does, then a person literally dies in a fantasy, and it will never be as real as you hoped that it could ever be. And everything is lost by the end of it. So what do we do about it, right? And the most important thing to note is awareness. And when we are unaware of things, the shaitan, the devil, he has a power over us and over our wounds when we are unconscious of the things which are triggering us and making us act a certain way. The most powerful thing that we can do to scare the thief of our hearts away is through shining a light on the behaviors and shining a light on our wounds, and really taking accountability that this is a weakness. Now, I want to also say that having feelings for someone outside of your marriage is something very natural, right? It's very natural to have these feelings sometimes. It just comes out the blue. It's normal, right? But what is the dangerous thing is when we allow these thoughts to continue, and we allow them to be manifested upon our limbs, and then we begin to act upon them. Now, when a person is unaware that really the reason why they're thinking about another person other than their spouse constantly, when a person is unaware, what happens is they might do something, right? And they are even maybe unaware of their intentions behind it, but that intention is because they like that person. They wouldn't do it with anyone else, right? So for example, they make them an extra nice cup of coffee, and it doesn't seem like a big deal because they make a coffee for everyone. Maybe that's their role inside of something, right? Maybe that's their job. So they make an extra special kind of coffee for someone, and what that does is they are acting upon a feeling behind an intention that maybe they are unaware of. And are we judged for our intentions that we're not aware of? Well, if we continue this behavior, it becomes something that becomes more conscious with time. So if we realize that we're acting towards someone, because the reason why we might not be aware of having feelings for this person or being addicted to them is because there's a lot of shame involved, and shame can blind us from how we truly feel. And the first thing is like become aware of that this is happening. I feel different towards this person than I do with this person. I am giving this person more attention than I would to this other person. And now I know that this might be dangerous, right? It might have an impact on me because now I'm acting upon it. And now that is what I'm doing nice for them and talking to them, even if it is as little as sitting near them at a work event or sitting near them at some event, I don't know, any event. What happens is that becomes something that is so much more than just a small act. It becomes a loaded act, and that feeling is something that you are bringing into existence, and that is when judgment comes upon us. That is when our actions, we will be questioned for. So that is why it's so important to become aware. If you're thinking about someone a little bit more than you are used to thinking about them, just a fleeting thought, sometimes you might have observed something, whatever, but if it's like addictive and you're thinking about it, your body is feeling a certain way when you're around them, you're getting hot, you're getting anxious, and all of these things, then it's important to pay attention to that and not completely ignore it and say it's not real, because then that is how we will begin to do things that we are unaware of, intentionally unaware of, and because we're ignoring all of the sensations, and then that takes one step, and then it takes another step, and then it takes another step, and God forbid you end up just doing something that you will truly regret because of this limerent feeling inside of you that attracted you to someone, an object, a person who became an object inside of your mind because what you imagined was a fantasy and it's not what the real person is. And most of the time when we are married and we've left our marriages or whatever, and you go to that marriage and then you cheat and whatever, what happens is that you realize, most of the time the person realizes, oh my goodness, this person is not what I thought it was going to be. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And they end up just like leaving that as well, and then feeling bad and going back to their spouses if their spouses accept them. So this is such a huge thing, and it is such a massive impact on Muslim marriages and marriages in general as well. So I would definitely say whenever you're thinking about someone in a way that is a little bit too much, or you're observing them and a little too interested or intrigued even, or curious about the way they do things or say things or whatever, just really become aware of what could be causing this, so you can have control of what happens next. And that is the most important thing as well. Now I'm going to finish with something that is also important to mention in relation to this, is that a lot of the times we might go to events, even Muslim events, we might go to certain gatherings and things, and you will notice that there is a lot of other people there who are, look a certain way, and people have made a real effort, and then what happens is our spouses might like wander their gaze or whatever, and I just want you to remember that this is a fantasy, and there is a pull sometimes towards the opposite gender, but just always remember for yourself, or for your spouse as well, that it is not real. It is a fantasy, and there is no way that a person can know another person without actually doing business with them, staying over the night with them, and just knowing them on a certain level. Those are like things that in the hadith, the narration of our Prophet, peace be upon him, speak about when you really know a person. And you are not going to know a person by looking at them and assuming that they are this thing that you have no idea what they are, right? So anyway, I just want you to keep that in mind as well. Just be aware of it. It's a dangerous thing, and it's such a huge thing which is breaking up marriages as well. Even if one of the spouses or none of them cheat, they still have this ideal inside of their head, and then they are contaminating the way they see their marriages, and they are constantly discontent, and it's never good enough, and it is a worth problem. It is something that a person has to start working on, their sense of self and their worth as well, which is something that is very shattered after trauma. So yes, just be aware of it, and then control what happens when you begin to notice that you are falling into a thought process or a feeling or an action even. And also just keep in mind that it's time to do some real work on ourselves as well, so we cannot fall into this lack of control, this addiction, this love addiction, which really always ends in tragedy, truly always ends in tragedy. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I also want to let you know that I am doing a group coaching cohort as part of Heal Therapy. All the information is below. Get on the waiting list, and I also have a free downloadable for you from my book, The Woke Writer. It's all about surrender. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Have a wonderful and blessed day, everyone. Peace.